On this edition of Independent Sources, Lost in Translation, why the city's court system is failing its non-English speaking immigrants. And an underground immigrant story. One woman tells her tale of giving up her life as a high-powered Wall Street analyst to change the conversation about immigration in this country. The details coming up.
Independent Sources, your window to the city's ethnic and immigrant communities. Here's your host, Gary Pierre.
Imagine for a moment that you're standing in front of a judge who is about to determine your future and that of your family. And despite your greatest efforts, you're not able to get through to him or her. Not because you can't speak, but because they can't understand what you're saying. That's the reality of many non-English speaking immigrants in the New York court system these days. According to figures released by the nonprofit legal aid organization, Legal Services NYC, about 3/4 of legal aid attorneys surveyed said that they had cases adjourned because of a language barrier. This is wreaking havoc on the lives of many immigrants, as well as creating a massive backlog of cases in the courts. I spoke with the director of the Civil Rights Justice Initiative at LSNYC to find out more about why this is the case and what's being done to address it. So, Christine, when we were discussing the story, when one of the producers pitched it, and I said, really? In New York City, we have issues with translator? How can that be?
Well, I think that there's a lot of reasons sort of why it happens. Some of it's logistical, some of it's sort of how our courts work, and that I think across the board, federally and at the state and city level, courts just haven't been able to keep up with the volume of cases that are happening. So that's, I think a lot of it really is that. But then the logistics and funding and getting enough interpreters and making sure that people know to use them and how to use them it's a real challenge. But at the same time, you know, the city of New York has been extremely diverse linguistically forever.
Sure.
And so it's not really a surprise that we, need a lot of language services to serve our population well.
Now, how is the city addressing the shortage?
So the Office of Court Administration, which administers all the courts in New York State, certainly has always made language access a priority for the past few years, but it's just executing it that I think is the problem. And so my understanding is that in the coming year, they're going to be rolling out some new practices and some new recommendations that I think will help. But there's a lot of, I think, organizational and sort of modernization that the courts need to do in order to catch up and be able to serve people well.
Is money at the core of this problem, or is not being able to find interpreters? What's at the root of this problem?
I think that money is part of the problem. Finding interpreters who can work for however much the courts pay, some of that is a problem. And then I think, again, some of it really is logistics. So, for example, right now in New York City with the affordable housing crisis, the housing courts are getting packed with people fighting evictions and being sued by their landlords or suing them for repairs. And so in order to keep up with that demand, you really have to have a smooth running scheduling system and a smooth running court system, where in reality the housing courts oftentimes still work on paper. They have paper files and things like that just make it impossible to coordinate on a large scale. And so I think that that's a large part of the problem, honestly.
Now, with the proliferation of smartphones or devices, is there a way technology can help in this process?
I think everyone is really waiting for that technological fix that will actually work. As it stands, I think they really don't work. So there's a great fear in the language access advocacy community that courts or police will start relying on like Google Translate, which is just not a functional way.
Well, it's gotten better, but it's still not there yet.
Right, it's gotten better if you're communicating, you're ordering food at a restaurant. But if you're talking about things where precision is really important, especially in the courts, it's just not a functional alternative. So I think when AI eventually catches up and learns all the languages well, it'll be an easy problem to fix. But for now, you have to rely on humans.
Are there any languages that's particularly difficult to fill?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the difficulty from within the court system about why they're not being filled, but I know that we at Legal Services have found certainly a shortage of interpreters for languages like Arabic, particularly in different dialects, and Urdu. And then, Chinese is a term that encompasses, like hundreds of dialects. And so we do have interpreters for Mandarin and Cantonese in many of the courthouses, not all of them always reliably, but then there's a whole plethora of other dialects that are quite common in New York, and so there's a great shortage of interpreters who speak Fuzhou or Tuosianese and other dialects like that.
Now, give us a sense why it's important to have an interpreter in court.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's hard for people to understand if they've never lived in a country where they don't speak the language, or they don't speak the language well. But the most important part is that, if you're not able to communicate at the level that you want to or are able to, you can't communicate properly what happened to you, you can't understand what's going on, and you can't participate in these really important decisions about your life, where you live, what benefits you're getting, custody of your children, these hugely important things. And if you can't participate well, then you can't really achieve justice accurately. And one of the big problems, I think, for example, is credibility. So someone who speaks English a little bit and is forced to use limited English can often sound much less credible, because all they can say is, I paid my rent, I paid my rent. They can't explain, I know I paid my rent because it was a Thursday morning and I was taking my kids, whatever the thing is that would allow a judge to determine their credibility.
Now, when police officers interact with a suspect, now, what happens there if the person does not speak English?
So starting soon, the city is in the process of rolling out a new program that will give all police officers access to what's called Language Line, which is it's a private provider of telephonic interpretation services. So you call a number and there's an interpreter immediately. So soon, currently in a few boroughs, but soon I think citywide, the police will hopefully be able to interact with anybody in any language through a telephonic interpreter. It's not ideal, but it's much better than not being able to communicate at all.
Hospitals have been using that system for quite some time successfully.
Yeah, and pharmacies too. There was a great bill passed in New York a few years ago about pharmacies. So certainly people know that it exists. We've been using it at Legal Services for a long time, and as well as other programs that are similar.
Now, going nationally, federally, the Trump administration has promised to deport people, and there's been lots of stories about that happening as we speak, probably. Now, I suppose interpreter needs has never been more urgent and greater. And how are we going to deal with that?
No, it's hugely important. Sort of during the first travel ban, for example, the first Muslim ban, one of the huge problems at JFK was that the people weren't getting interpreters, and so they were being interrogated without interpreters. And then any number of things can happen. You really can't protect yourself, or even ask for a lawyer if you don't understand what's happening. So it's more important now than ever. And I think, as far as New York City being a sanctuary city and trying to make the city, welcoming to immigrants, you can debate the degree of sanctuary that New York City provides, but if we can't give people access to justice, to participate in a sort of a society based on rule of law, then we're not really a welcoming city for immigrants. So it's hugely important that people be allowed to participate fully in all of our government services.
And nationally, is there an effort to really redress this issue? Because it is coming. If you're going after presumably undocumented immigrants, and chances are they don't speak English. So are you advocating, or any organization advocating about that part of it? Although I know the fight is much broader than that, but that's the first step.
So there is a national coalition of language access advocates, but we're all sort of locally focused. And so we are trying to sort of, we do have monthly phone calls and we try to be in touch with each other. But one of the big problems, I think, is that nationally, at the federal level, the coordination about language access is done historically through the Department of Justice, the Federal Department of Justice. And so whether they now are going to prioritize language access is, we don't know. We have to see what happens.
It's interesting that we want to hire, Washington wants to hire 10,000 ICE officers, but at the same time not budgeting for the consequences of those actions.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the problems in federal court is that for a lot of federal court cases, most federal court civil cases, there's not even a requirement that the courts provide you with an interpreter. So in New York State, at least theoretically, everyone gets an interpreter. In the federal courts, that's just not the case. So if you're charged with a criminal violation or the crime, or you're being deported, you'll get an interpreter. But if you're being sued in federal court, you don't get an interpreter. And that's a serious problem.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Kristen Clark, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Still to come on the show, an author's underground immigration story may soon be coming to your video screens. This week's On the Shelf features Julissa Arce, an undocumented Mexican immigrant turned high-powered Wall Street analyst who walked away from that world in an effort to help other immigrants. Arce's book, My Underground American Dream, chronicles her middle-class life in Mexico and the struggle she endured after her parents brought her to the U.S. Zyphus Lebrun spoke to Arce via Skype about the book and what she means when she says she wants to change the conversation about immigration.
Julissa Arce, welcome to Independent Sources.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Okay, so Julissa, your book, My Underground American Dream. Why did you decide to write this book?
I wanted to write a book to tell a different story of immigration than the one we're used to hearing. I think immigration is very often told through a political lens, through a numbers game, and not enough through a human perspective. So I wanted to give a human perspective of what it means to be an immigrant to this country.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talk a lot about your life, and one of the things that you mention in the book, and I want to read a passage from the book here specifically, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. This is just after you're told that you can't have your quinceañera, which is your 15th birthday celebration, which is very much a big part of Mexican culture. And you write in the book, I didn't understand the true ramifications of my mother's words. All I heard was that I couldn't have my party, and I knew this wasn't a party that I could throw myself when I was all grown up and rich. It wasn't a moment I could recreate. It would be gone forever. I was simply too young or maybe too naive to understand that on that night, my mother had shared a secret that would define and haunt me for years to come. For me, that was a really powerful graph in your book, because it kind of talked about, to me, or at least I got from it, that you were struggling at that moment. It was a big moment of revelation for you. What at that moment was that for you like? You know, could you walk me through your process there of what you felt when your mom told you that?
Yeah. So, for a lot of undocumented young people that came here because their parents brought them here, I think all of us kind of have this one moment when we realize that we're undocumented, right? It's not like we came here on our own, and so therefore we always know we're undocumented. And for me, that moment that you described, that you just read in the book, is the moment that I found out that I was undocumented. But on that evening, as I write in the book, I didn't realize that the real consequence wasn't that I couldn't go to Mexico to have this party I've wanted all my life. It was that I was undocumented, and therefore my life in America was going to be very challenging and very difficult. But that night, I really was just sad that I couldn't have a party. And I was 14 years old, so I think it's a very normal reaction for a 14-year-old girl to have, not to realize that as I said in the book, the words that my mother had told me had ramifications that were much bigger and were going to impact my life in a deeper way.
Mm-hmm. When we were talking earlier, you mentioned the fact that you wanted to change the narrative a little bit about immigrants. And one of the things you stress in the book is the fact that, you know what, your family wasn't down on their luck. You know, your mom and dad had a successful business. You had entrepreneurial skills from very early on, selling, to the guys who were unloading the trucks near where you lived. Is that a big part of it, this whole notion that, not all immigrants to the United States are necessarily poor or down on their luck? Is that a part of what you wanted to get out there as well?
Well, I think that the narrative that I'm trying to change is that immigrants come here to take from America, and that we come here to get on welfare, because that a lot of times is the narrative, that immigrants come here to take. And so what I wanted to show through my book is that, in fact, immigrants come here from all kinds of backgrounds. Not every immigrant that comes here is a poor immigrant who has nothing back home, right? There are immigrants who actually leave behind land, and they leave behind incredible careers because they're trying to come to America to give their children a better life. And no one does that. No one leaves so much behind to just come and get by.
Right.
Because if all we wanted to do is to just get by, we would have just stayed where we were. Right? We make incredible sacrifices, as I'm sure you read in the book, the sacrifices that I've had to make in my life. And we do that because we want something greater. We're seeking something greater.
Right. One of the sacrifices that you eventually made was that you gave up your high-powered job at Goldman Sachs. And one of the things I want to do is kind of step back and then go forward in that. Talk to you a little bit about your experience working there. It was, you talk about it, it was one of your biggest dreams to work there. First, I want to ask, what was it like working there, being undocumented? So we'll get to that first. And then secondly, kind of talk about why you decided to leave.
Yeah. Well, working on Wall Street is very stressful. Of course, it's a very high-paced environment. I had a really incredible career working there. First at Goldman Sachs and then at Merrill Lynch. I did really well when I was working there, and I enjoyed that kind of really fast-paced environment. I wasn't constantly every single day thinking I'm undocumented. Really day to day, I was more worried about my next promotion or my next raise or the next deal I had to close. And in a lot of ways, that was really beneficial to me because then I didn't spend so much time thinking about my immigration status. But I was undocumented, and that fear that on any day I could be found out, and on any day someone could realize that I wasn't really supposed to be there, that fear was always there.
Right.
And there were times when I couldn't deny the fact that I was undocumented because there were just opportunities that I couldn't take advantage of, or there were things that I just couldn't do because of my immigration status.
Right, right. And so did that leave you, that sort of frustration, did that lead you to leaving Goldman Sachs, or was it something else?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to give too much away.
Right, of course, of course.
But I think it's pretty widely known that I'm actually now a U.S. citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I left Goldman and when I left Merrill, I actually was already a permanent resident. I had my green card.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't so much that frustration that led me to leave. It was really more the realization that, well, two things. One, it was this realization that my whole life, I had one goal in mind, and that goal was, how do I become American?
Right.
And I say it in quotations because I feel like I've been American for much longer than I've had a U.S. passport.
Absolutely.
But how do I fix my immigration status? And I had this idea that maybe if I could just get really rich, then somehow I would be able to fix my immigration status. That, of course, wasn't the case because that line that we often talk about just doesn't exist for many, many people. So it was that realization that my whole life I'd been doing this one thing for this one purpose, and I had never really stepped back to really think about what it is that I wanted to do with my life. And the second realization was that there were so many people out there who still today, every single day, are going through what I went through and now have to live in even more fear than I had to live with this administration. And so given the two things combined, I realized I could use my story to change the narrative. I can perhaps give someone a different perspective that they've never considered before. And I can also empower other people who are in my situation or other people who perhaps don't feel like they are part of what makes America.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that your book currently holds more weight than it perhaps could before the current administration?
Well, so here's the thing, right? I know that in the news right now we're seeing so much about how immigrant communities are being persecuted and they're being criminalized. But as an immigrant, I can tell you that that's happened to me my whole life.
Right.
So in that sense, it's not something that's new.
Right.
But it certainly is exacerbated by this administration. And so I think my book, I think at the core, my underground American dream is really an American story.
Right.
that transcends sort of what's happening right now in our political climate, because it really, when I look at my life, I really think that it's just a story about overcoming obstacles and persevering in the face of adversity, and those principles hold true regardless of who's president.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you've been very active in the community, reaching out and talking to people. Tell me a little bit about that, some of the work that you've been doing.
So I co-founded a scholarship fund in New York City called the Ascend Educational Fund, and we provide college scholarships and mentorship to immigrant students in New York City, regardless of their immigration status. And this year, we'll be giving out our fifth round of scholarships. So this is going to be our fifth year giving out these scholarships. In the last 4 years, we've given out $200,000 in college scholarships, which has really changed the lives of a lot of our scholars. For a lot of them, we are the only option that they have. There is no other financial aid or scholarships that they can have access to. So that's part of the work that I do. I'm also on the board of the National Immigration Law Center. And right now, as we've seen with recent events with the Muslim ban, for example, the judiciary branch is our only sort of line of defense. And the Immigration Law Center has been at the forefront of filing alongside the ACLU for filing this to stop the Muslim ban and other things from happening. So I'm really proud of the work that both organizations are carrying out.
Now, Julissa, in reading your book and in learning more about your story, there was something that, full disclosure, I'm an immigrant to this country as well, that I constantly kept asking myself about, as regards to why it took your parents so long to tell you that, that big secret, or the secret that they kept from you about your status. Why was that the case, do you think?
Well, I think just like any parent, you always want the best for your child. And I think that there are certain issues perhaps that you don't want to discuss with a child at an early age because you don't want to traumatize them. You don't want to worry them about something that there's really nothing they can do about, right? I was 11 years old when I came here. And actually, my visa didn't expire until I was 14. So my mom did actually tell me shortly after my visa expired that I could go to Mexico because my visa had expired and that made me undocumented. So I actually did find out pretty shortly after my visa expired, but there are kids who will tell you that they didn't find out they were undocumented until they were going to college, until they were applying to college, or until they were 16 trying to get a driver's license. And I think it's because, our parents would rather us focus on our school, on our future, than spending so much time and energy worrying about something that we really just can't control and there's nothing we can do about.
So, we're about to wrap. So I just wanted to kind of talk to you about what are your hopes for this book? It's been out a couple of months now. It's on the shelf. It's available in bookstores and on Amazon.com and so forth. What do you hope can come out? Do you intend to perhaps stir more conversation about immigration?
Yeah, exactly. I think that if somebody can pick up the book and they can, at the very least, just have a different perspective about this issue, then I feel like I would have done my job in writing this book. I am really excited that the book is currently being developed for a television series with America Ferrera helping me to produce it. And to me, that kind of just shows the need for these personal stories that are not just one-dimensional, right? Because I think at the core, like as human beings, we're complicated. Humans aren't this like single frame people. And so I think in the book, you get a lot of that. You get a lot of complexities about life. And yes, I'm an immigrant, but at the end of the day, I'm a human being.
Right.
And I face the same challenges that many people face, whether they're immigrants or not.
Right. It's very significant that you said that you were a human being because in the book, it really, I guess it spoke to me when you said that at certain points you felt alien. You didn't feel quite human when you felt like you were on the outside. I guess that we all go through that, right? Living in two worlds, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
Well, Julissa, it's been a pleasure talking. The book is My Underground American Dream. Julissa Arce, thank you for being on Independent Sources.
Thank you so much for having me.
When we come back, Queens employees fight back when nearly 100 of them come under Homeland Security scrutiny. Finally, from us. From Tucson to Chicago, there's been a wave of Department of Homeland Security workplace audits and raids around the country. Now, this is happening in New York. On March 15th, workers at Tomcat Bakery in Queens received a company letter saying DHS was doing an audit. They were given 10 working days to provide documents or be fired. Up to 100 workers may be affected. Rather than accept these terms, workers decided to fight back with their union, the Industrial Workers of the World, and the nonprofit advocacy group Brand Workers. They recently held a rally and press conference outside the Tomcat factory.
Bueno, antes que nada, buenos días y bienvenidos. Gracias por estar apoyándonos. Somos trabajadores de Tomcat. Tenemos aquí, mi nombre es Héctor. Tengo 20 años radicando en este país, pagando impuestos, tengo una familia, tengo hijos y que queremos mandar un mensaje al gobierno y al presidente que no somos criminales como se nos cataloga, que estamos aquí como todo mundo para tratar de vivir una vida mejor.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. Estamos en la lucha. Tomcat, escucha. 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 Estamos en la lucha.
Sí, mi nombre es Henry Rivera. He trabajado para Tomcat Bakery aproximadamente 11 años, ¿verdad? Y hemos estado, ¿verdad?, con esta compañía, haciéndola crecer todos juntos. Y, o sea, hemos estado, ¿verdad?, en esta compañía en frío, en calor, ¿verdad? Sí, como les iba diciendo, nosotros sabemos lo que es estar allá adentro, ¿sí me entienden? En el calor que hace en los hornos, en la prisa que nosotros ¿verdad?, tenemos que tomar para poder llevar el pan a tiempo a la ciudad de Nueva York. Y le damos la gracias a todos los que están aquí reunidos en apoyo, ¿verdad?, a nosotros, y tenemos que seguir todos juntos peleando esto para ganar la victoria. No solamente por los trabajadores de este lugar, sino de todo Nueva York, a nivel nacional también.
Tomcat, escucha, estamos en la lucha. Tomcat, escucha, estamos en la lucha. Tomcat, escucha, estamos en la lucha. Tomcat, escucha, estamos en la lucha.
Bueno, la razón por la cual estamos aquí reunidos juntos con los compañeros de trabajo, con Brand Workers, es porque el 15 de marzo recibimos una carta donde se nos notificaba que teníamos que traer, mostrar algunos documentos. Es por eso que estamos unidos aquí, porque se nos hace injusto lo que están haciendo con nosotros, porque no se nos está dando un tiempo y pensamos que la compañía puede hacer algo por nosotros.
Tomcat was contacted for the story but declined to comment. The company's president and general manager, James Rath, was quoted in the Village Voice as saying in part, "There is nothing to report. We are in the middle of a standard Homeland Security investigation document audit. We will keep an eye on this story as things develop." That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.